time for Q&A. You should put a white piece of paper on your way in. If you didn't, just raise your hand. One of our lovely volunteers will come give it to you. Okay, so first question I have. Do you think it's the responsibility of individual nations to fight poverty, or an international response is needed?
Oh, okay, yeah, that's a good question. So, yes, you asked if I think it's the responsibility of individuals or the responsibility of nations to poverty?
No, it's the
Oh, I'm sorry.
individual nations.
The individual
so
nations.
USA, Korea, individual nations, or
Okay.
international response, many nations.
Okay. Okay, oh, what's your name, brother?
Richard.
Oh, yeah, nice to meet you. Oh, yeah, that's a great question. Well, I think it depends on what the strategy is. So for example, as an American citizen, if I want to do something about American poverty, well, I would have to get involved with American organizations to do something about poverty there. So if I'm interested in reducing poverty at the level of my country, then I would have to do it there. But if you're interested in reducing poverty at the global level, that requires a different kind of strategy. And there are all kinds of good organizations that do that kind of thing. There is an organization, you can Google this, it's called the Life You Can Save Pledge. And that organization is designed where ordinary citizens are willing to give a certain percentage of their income to deal with the global poverty issue. Now, probably the best that you could do, this is just my opinion, but maybe the best you could do to deal with the global poverty problem is just to donate a percentage of your income to programs to help with those underdeveloped countries, say. And maybe that's the best you can do, because in the underdeveloped countries, they really don't have the kinds of governments that are built where they can sustain themselves. Yeah.
The question I have, this might be a bit philosophical, but do you think it's down to human negligence that poverty is so prevalent, or is the product of capitalist system?
Well, let's see. Well, I think that, you know, like, there's a famous Winston Churchill quote where he says something like, yeah, Winston Churchill famously said, like, democracy is the worst form of government except for all those others. And what he means is that, you know, actually, democracy is the best we can do. And probably the best that we can do is to have, like, a capitalist economy. So I think that maybe some of these conditions are created because of the economic system. But since it's the world that we have to live with, maybe the best that you can do is to create social programs and social policy to deal with that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, on that topic, with so many Americans wanting public policy change and failing to it, free poverty is really just down to a failure of democracy.
Oh, well, yeah. So what seems to be happening there is that, yeah, in the United States, unfortunately, it really doesn't matter what the average American wants. You said, is it a failure of democracy? That's actually the conclusion of that research that I read. That political science article that I read said something like that. I hope not, though. I really hope that's not true.
Speaking of Korea, it's a very unique country, as Korea developed incredibly quickly as opposed to other nations. Why do you think that was?
Oh, why do I think Korea developed really quickly? Oh, yeah, so I actually have some of the data about Korea. And I'm sorry that I didn't talk specifically about enough about Korea in the talk. And the reason I didn't is because I think that I feel a certain responsibility to do something as a citizen, as an American citizen, and I didn't want to give advice on what anybody else should do for their country. But regarding Korea, yeah, so from 1950 to 1953, the Korean War was really devastating on the economy, and actually people were living in extremely impoverished conditions. So the first strategy that was implemented directly after is they said, we just have to make this economy much stronger. So the economy got stronger, and there was still a problem with the rich and the poor. I'm sorry, there was still a big problem where there were a large group of people who were poor in Korea, and the best way that they dealt with that is they pushed through different social programs. So Korea has created a national. Korea has a national health insurance. Korea has a national pension. I'm sorry, I'm excited. And they have a lot of different policies to support workers, to compensate them if they have any kind of injuries in the job. So the short answer is, I think that the way that they reduced poverty in Korea was they made the economy strong first, and then they built all of these social policies to help reduce the poverty in Korea.
There's been many active movements against these failures of democracy. What do you think of the Occupy movement, and were you a part of any such movement?
Oh, no, I'm familiar with the Occupy movement. No, I'm not involved with it, but I did see it. I passed by it in Washington, D.C. Like I actually visited there with a friend while the Occupy movement was still going on, and yeah, I didn't go because I'm very socially shy. So I didn't go and talk to anybody there. But yeah, I mean that's a very grassroots social movement. A group of people who are very interested in reducing poverty, among other social issues too.
Is there any movements you are part of in this same sort of sense?
Well, one of the so I mentioned the global poverty issue. I don't do as much as I could, but I donate a certain percentage of my income each year to help global poverty. That's what I do for the global poverty issue. As for the issue for what to do to reduce American poverty, the first thing that I'm really doing is just talking to folks back home about the issue. And I thought about writing a senator, but I didn't know if it was going to do any good. But that might be one of the things I would do. Yeah.
Okay, another question. Do you think it's actually possible for poverty to be not just tackled but eradicated? Do you think that's physically possible?
Well, I mean, whether it is or not, maybe not actually. But one of the things that definitely can happen is it definitely looks like in the United States and Korea. I read an article about this from some Korean social scientists who were talking about how the social policies just get better and better in Korea. That's the big conclusion of the paper. And then also in America, I think that the social programs are going to get better and better. So I think that incrementally, little by little, there will be these good efforts to reduce poverty. So even if you can't eliminate it, well, the best you can do is maybe make little incremental changes and reduce it.
Okay. I hope so. Okay, you mentioned earlier about the effects of poverty. One of your findings was it's reduced happiness, and you can say what, a third, or the poorest Americans were a third as happy, or quarter as happy?
Yeah, it's 1/3. It's 1/3. Let's see. Oh, I forgot the number. But so the income, the number that I make, I'm in the low well-being chart. Actually.
Okay, so how was that measured? Like, how was that happiness measured?
Yeah. It is a good question. So that research that you're talking about, Richard, was conducted by a man named Daniel Kahneman. And maybe I could show you. Oh, they've already removed the slide. That's okay. But anyway, I actually have a slide about it that shows the measure. And one of the things that they did was they surveyed people in terms of like self-reports for happiness and depression. And yeah, so it's based on like a large group of survey data, is what it is. So and then they correlate it with the income that people have. Yeah.
Yeah, that's all the questions I've got there. So.
Okay.